Welcome to Tony and KJ. Moved to France.
Hi, welcome to KJ and Tony Moved to France. In today's video, we are once again answering your questions. Beep. Hi, welcome to KJ and Tony Moved to France. In today's video, we are answering our viewers' questions.
And make sure you stick around for the end because today we'll be talking about how...
Beep.
Take 46.
Welcome to KJ and Tony Moved to France. In today's video, we are answering our viewers' questions.
And make sure you stick around for the end of the video because we'll be discussing the difference between residency and citizenship, and long-term residency and temporary residency.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
And before we get started, I want to just put out a little bit of a disclaimer. We're not attorneys. We don't know all the ins and outs of the French government. We're answering you based on our experience, the things that we have found. Okay?
And what we know so far.
And what we know, yes.
Yeah, this is an evolving experience.
Keep in mind, we've been here 3 months. Mm-hmm. So we're also experiencing all the things that we have to do to get permanent residency, even though we have a long-term visa.
Mm-hmm. And one of those I know we've talked about over and over again is the bank account. A lot of people have questions about the bank account. I know it is a bit of a struggle to open a bank account, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've been putting it off. Not only that, you have to have a permanent address, or you have to have a lease or some sort of agreement beyond, we're doing a month to month. And so we haven't even really needed to do that yet, which is why we haven't done it. But I know that down the road, we're definitely going to need to do it because we do want to sign a long-term lease. Sure. And or potentially purchase a property.
And keep in mind that your banking in the United States, it all stays the same. In today's world, we still pay our bills online through our American bank account. In France, we pay certain things with our Wise card, mm-hmm. but we still have our American accounts and we're able to pay our bills that way.
Well, and as we've talked about before, I know we're repeating ourselves here, but for people who are maybe just watching this for the first time, that's the value in the Wise account. The value in the Wise account is that you're not going to be paying all of these fees every time you use your, let's say your debit card or your credit card, and they tack on these additional charges because of the conversion mm-hmm. to euros. That's where Wise comes in really handy. But we haven't gotten there yet to the bank account, and when we do, we will certainly be sharing that information with you. So, first question is, do you need to show 6 months living in France to get your long-term visa for France? And I don't think so, because this is a bit of a disclaimer with what Tony said. I don't remember having to provide 6 months. I can tell you that we had Paris and we had Versailles booked. Maybe we had Nice, I can't quite remember. And I did have to explain to them that we plan on moving around, and that's why we weren't signing a lease. So I don't think that you have to have anything beyond a month or 2 months, and you have to let them know what your plan is. I think what's more important to them is that you have to provide proof of your income and your ability to sustain yourself living in France. So they want your bank account information, and the requirement is that you are making at least the equivalent of the minimum wage in France, which I think equates to, when you convert it to gross, net versus gross. From what I remember, and I'll pull up the information when we talk about citizenship and residency, it's around like $15,000, $16,000 a year, US dollars. So I don't think it's too much of like they're not asking for a huge amount of money, but you do have to provide that to them. So I think they're more interested in that.
Sure. And to go back to the original question, we didn't have 6 months.
We didn't.
So if we didn't have 6 months and we're here and they approved it, you know.
I think we had 3, but I
Yeah.
do remember her asking to, I needed to provide the receipts from VRBO and Airbnb to show them and also explain what we were planning to do.
And that brings up another point. At this interview, you have to be conciliatory. You have to be prepared. This is not the kind of interview that you're demanding. And when you don't get the answer you want or you get put off, you can't try to be a tough guy or try to be a strong personality. That's not the environment here. You want to actually be conciliatory and just show you're prepared and you've done your due diligence and get them on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question. How does your family, sons and grandson, feel about your move to France? So this person was saying, I read somewhere that you have a grandson, and so how is your family feeling? How do they feel about our move to France?
We have 3 sons, 3 completely different situations.
Right.
We have the youngest one that you've heard all about is here for 7 weeks. Will likely be coming back in the summer. He will come every time we invite him, I'm sure. He loves it here.
Yeah.
He's in school, so he has nothing to tie him to the United States. And we talk to him every couple of days when he is in the United States. I don't see him as any concern at all. Then we have the oldest one who owns his own business, who's working, he's a workaholic, frankly. He's working 70 or 80 hours a week. He is the father of our grandson, and he says he's going to come in the springtime for a week or so. Frankly, I'm a little dubious because work always comes first for him, and I hope he comes. I think Paris is the kind of place where it'll spur him to come. And we've told him how wonderful it is here, and in his way of thinking, Paris would be a wonderful place. So I think he will come. I talk to him almost every day, and video chats and all kinds of things. So he's not an issue. Our third son, our middle son, is living in Idaho, and we talk to him once a week or so, and I don't think he'll be coming. He's in training to become an electrician. He's in an electrician's school and working real hard and having to live through a tough winter in Idaho.
For the first time
For
since
the first
Florida.
time, right. He's in his early 30s, and this is his first full winter in a winter climate. So, we are, in today's world, you can be in easy communication. When we moved to Paris in November, KJ's mother was afraid we weren't going to talk to her ever again because it's 3,500 miles away.
Yeah.
Now she says to us, I talk to you and see you more often than I did before. So it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, and it's not like we're never going to go back to the U.S. We're definitely going to go back to the U.S. at some point because, yes, you are. We have a storage facility there. We have to plan for once we find the place, then we're going to move the very small amount of belongings that we still have in storage, move that to France. So
Yeah, and the truth is, depending on what we do here permanently, if we were to buy a house or something like that, maybe we'd bring, ship almost all of that here.
Yeah.
Or maybe we wouldn't.
we'll see.
As you have seen through our videos, we're very fluid.
Yeah.
I came to France thinking we had, 2 pieces of luggage each and each other.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
So family's all good. And the next question is, this is interesting. A few questions, they say. If one of you became seriously ill, would you remain in France or return to the US? Can Tony access So let's answer that first, because there's multiple questions here. So if one of us became seriously ill, would we remain in France or return to the US?
Well, I think that depends on
It depends.
on what the seriously ill. If I were to have a heart attack, I think it would have to be taken care of here.
Right.
I don't think I'd survive if I had a heart attack going back to the United States.
Right.
On the other hand, if I had something like cancer, I'm not sure. If we were in Paris, I might stay here. If we were down south in a smaller town, then I might go back to the United States. Again, we're kind of fluid, and we'll address those things as they happen to us. But I'm not thinking about having to go back for something like that.
Right. And I agree that it just depends on what it is and when it would happen. If something like that were to happen relatively quickly, like now, before we've really integrated into the culture and the language and all of that, then probably we would go back to the US. But it depends on when.
Yeah.
If we're already integrated into the culture and the language, and we're really happy with where we're living and we have the health insurance and all of that, then probably not. So timing would be certainly a factor relative to that question. And then the next part of that is, can Tony access his Medicare benefits in France, or does the renewable senior visa grant inexpensive health coverage? In any event, I'm sure your plans are contingent on whether both of you remain physically mobile, hopefully, and healthy. And a final question, can you safely invest in property with a senior visa, or do you need, we'll address that one next.
So
the health insurance.
As far as health insurance is concerned, in order to get that initial appointment when we were getting our visa, we had to buy health insurance for the first year, right? And it was, as I recall, about $1,000 for both of us for a year. After 3 months being here, then we can apply to have the French health coverage.
Right.
And so then we're covered. I don't believe I have any ability to touch Medicare or anything like that, because
while we're in France.
Yeah,
if
while
we
we're
were
in
to go
France.
back to the US, because we have an address in the US, and I don't think that even matters, but maybe. But going back to the US, you can utilize the Medicare benefits there because they don't go away. They, you get them as a part of your Social Security benefits.
And let's not forget that it is part of Social Security. And Social Security isn't something the government's giving us. It's something we've paid into our whole lives.
Right.
So it's our money to begin with. So.
Well, and I think another question was, if I'm remembering correctly, like, can you opt out of that? Like, can you tell them, I'm not going to take advantage of the Medicare, so just don't charge me for that anymore, because they take it out as a part of Social Security, and then you would get more Social Security benefits? I don't think it works that way
I don't
at
think
all.
so either.
Yeah, so I think that wouldn't be an option. So yes and no. No, we can't take advantage of Medicare here, but yes, if we went back to the US, we would still be able to access, or Tony, I'm not of retirement age yet, but Tony would.
And yes, we have insurance by virtue of you have to have it to come here.
You have to have a full year, and we talked about that in the last video, so if you'd like to go check out that video, we talk about that a little more. And then the question, can you safely, that's a key word, so I think I want to just extract the word safely from the question and say, can you invest in property with a senior visa, or the retirement visa is what you're referring to, or do you plan on indefinitely renting? You can purchase property no matter what. Like, you can come over here on, I believe, like even a short stay visa. There's nothing that prohibits people from coming in, and just like people from Europe can come to the US and invest in property in the US. You can, I think you do need maybe to have a bank account in France. I'm not sure about that.
That would depend also on whether you're putting a mortgage on it, or paying cash.
Or paying cash.
So, but to go back to the safely part of it, real estate here is different than real estate in the United States. How it's different, I don't know enough about it yet to explain, but I'm under the impression that it doesn't escalate in the way that it escalates in the United States, where buying a piece of property, for the most part, is a guaranteed savings program in the United States, and something that you're building greater and greater equity in. Here, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. So, but we're still working through that.
And as far as whether we'll rent indefinitely or buy, we would much prefer to ultimately buy, but it's going to, again, depend because we're not quite sure. We're still deciding between Paris, the south of France, a small country town.
Sure.
So we don't know. We're thinking the ideal scenario, of course, would be able to go back and forth between the two, like Paris, and have some place in the warmer area
Sure.
during the winter, and then maybe buying a place and renting that Airbnb, use it as an Airbnb. But again, we don't know enough about it yet to really make that decision for ourselves or even really explain it to you. But I can tell you that you can buy property, that the visa does not prevent you from purchasing property here. Okay, next question is, the visa form asks for an address in France. Did you put your first Airbnb place? Also, you may have already answered this in prior videos, but do you need a French bank account? So yes and no. Yes, we provided the address of the first 2 Airbnb places, and we have not yet needed to have a French bank account.
And that also goes to another question. We have used our address here for a variety of different things. We've had no problem getting mail. We've had no problem getting Amazon deliveries. It's just not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that it appears that it takes about a week for a package to be sent from the United States to France. And of course, that depends on circumstances. I'm sure during the holidays it's longer, but it takes about a week, but that's not been an issue at all.
At all. And that's one positive, definitely, that I can say about the place in Versailles as well as the place in Paris, that the owner of the property said just put your name on the mailbox and gave us keys to the mailboxes in both places, and we have not had any problems receiving mail and or getting packages. All right, next question. And what are your favorite cheeses? Someone wants to know what our favorite cheese is.
Well, I came to this country not being a big fan of blue cheese. I don't know if you have heard about our blue cheese or our cheese experience when we first came here. Did we tell them about that?
You have told that story before, I believe.
All right, so I don't need to bore you again. But that event actually allowed me to have high quality blue cheese. And it's spectacular, like the best cheese I've ever had in my life. And cheeses in general here are of higher quality, but that is of such high quality that has become my favorite kind of cheese.
The blue cheese. And that's Piers's favorite now too, is the blue cheese. And even though like that experience we spent like almost $300 on cheese one day. They were big, huge blocks of cheese though. They were not, it was a lot of cheese. We had to work hard to like eat all that cheese by the end of the month.
More.
So what I have found though is that it's not as expensive as we sort of like thought, because we go to the cheese shop here in Versailles and it's very inexpensive. My favorite cheese is any type of truffle cheese. I really love, whether that's truffle blue cheese, anything that has truffle in it, I love. And I could seriously just live on cheese and bread every single day.
I could too.
Easily, although
Especially
my waistline would not.
It's not only that the cheese is so good here, the bread is so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So thank you for that question. And then the next question, which I think is a perfect question for you, is how do you get from Versailles to Paris and vice versa, because this person is visiting in July and and I think they're staying in Versailles and going into Paris, but both ways.
Okay.
How do you do it?
So, first of all, once you know what you're doing, it's a piece of cake, okay? In Versailles, there are multiple train stations, but there are two of them that are within a block of each other. One is the Rive Gauche, and the other one is Chantiers. Rive Gauche is closer for most people, but Chantiers has more trains going into Paris every day. It's more of the commuter train station.
More direct trains, right?
Yes. And
At
while
least that we've found.
there are locals, right? By that I mean local trains that stop everywhere. About twice an hour, there are direct trains, and we go on the 1038 direct to Paris. It takes us 12 minutes to get from Versailles into Montparnasse, if I'm saying that correctly, which is one of the main train stations in Paris. And then we take a subway wherever we're going from there. 12 minutes. It's a piece of cake. No stop, nothing. And the trains and the subways are much quieter here than in the United States. It's very pleasant. Very pleasant.
And what you'll find is that it can take longer, well, maybe not actually longer, but there's a long walk to get to the metro, so be prepared for that. If you take the direct from Chantiers or even Rive Gauche, which is also referred to as Chateau station, if you take that in, however you take it, whether it's direct or multiple stops, and you get to Montparnasse, then you have to go downstairs to the metro, so you have to go down like 2 or 3 escalators, flights of stairs.
But the long walk has more to do with the train we take than trains in general. Yes, we have to go down the 2 or 3 floors, but for us, it spreads out from there, and we're the furthest away from the main station. So it is about a 10-minute walk. The good news being is that the subways run like every 4 minutes. So if you miss it, you miss it. It's coming in a few minutes.
Right. Well, but just to give you an exact route that you can use if you're traveling from Versailles to Paris, and let's say you want to end up, because it does depend on where you want to end up in Paris, but we'll tell you how we end up at Saint-Michel.
Place Saint-Michel.
Place Saint-Michel. So we take the M4, and you want to make sure, this is something that took us a little bit to figure out in the beginning, you want to take the M4 towards, and we refer to it as the Klingon station.
It's the opposite of the Bagno. The Bagno is coming home.
We don't know how to pronounce it, so we just call it the Klingon station. It's called Klingno or something like that. And so we just joke around and we say, okay, we're going towards Klingon today.
So a couple of things about that. First of all, from Versailles to Place Saint-Michel, 2 trains costs us €4 and 15.
Each. Yeah.
Okay, €4 and 15. That's nothing for that length of a train ride. Secondly, we go to Place Saint-Michel because you come out of that subway and you're close to everything.
Yeah.
Right? The river is right there. Notre Dame is maybe a 4-minute walk. Saint-Germain Boulevard is right there. Saint-Michel Boulevard is right there. And where we were living in Paris is
right there.
Right there, 3 minutes away. So all the shopping you want, all the touristy stuff you want, the river, did I mention the river? It's everything that you want is right there. So it's the number 4 train. Keep in mind that look for the M, because that means metro. It's incredibly logical. It actually took me 3 or 4 times to see it to get it, but the M is for metro, and number 4 will take you to Place Saint-Michel.
And key fact to remember, when you're going to Versailles, you're going to take Bagno. And when you're coming to Paris, you're going to take Klingon.
Right. And when you're coming back to Versailles and you're taking Bagno, you get off at Montparnasse. And that, again, that's the main station, and then you have to walk to your train.
Yeah, and the train will be called Chartres, right?
Not always, but usually. That's the most
Chartres.
common.
And that takes you to Versailles. Yeah. Okay. We ready to move on?
We're ready to move on.
Okay, this isn't a question per se, but it's a thought that one of our viewers wanted us to put out there for people to know, to consider, to maybe comment about. And so let me read it and then you'll understand what I mean. As you're planning to make a permanent home in France, have you given any thought to what might be your accommodation options once you get older? As you know, we've moved to France in our 60s. Aging seems a long way off, and there's no way we ever plan to be in institutional age care. That's why we've been thinking of some type of co-housing as a possible option. That's where a small group of people with common interests pool their resources to purchase a lovely chateau, villa, like a Marigold hotel type place that either offers or could be adapted to provide independent apartment style living. Then together everyone would fund the cost of the services they need, like housekeeping, gardening, live-in nurse, etc. People would be free to come and go as they please and not be tied to the home. Some may choose to live elsewhere in the world as well for part of the year. We think this could also be an option for when one of us is left on our own. We wonder if there are other people around the world who might find this kind of lifestyle appealing as we all age. Life is too short to grow old. So that's just sort of like a consideration. And is that something that we would consider? Again, it depends. It depends on where we wind up and how we feel about our situation. Would we never consider that? I would never say never.
Well, and when does that come into play? You don't know.
You don't know.
I'm 66, and is that 15 years from now when
Right.
I'm 81? Who knows what happens in 15 years? Right? 15 years ago, I didn't even know you.
Right.
Right? And my whole life changed when I met you.
Yeah.
She's smiling. It did.
And yeah, and it really depends on, there are people who are 60 that their bodies are more aged than some. My parents, who are both still alive, are 85 and 88, and they're in great physical condition, and they have all of their mental faculties. So, again, I think it depends. It depends on your situation.
And your father's always been athletic. He still plays tennis twice a week. You've always been athletic. So I think that plays into, your ability to have a long life. You've had a healthy life. So I've been athletic, although in the last 20 years my weight's gone up and down quite a bit, but I seem to be doing okay.
And exercise, by the way, is the number one protective factor, I guess you could call it, or it's the number one factor that contributes to longevity. So something to keep in mind. Definitely want to get out there and be exercising, or
try walking up 57 steps
multiple times a day. That'll get your heart rate going.
You'll either have a heart attack or you'll get in shape, one or the other.
Okay. All right, another question is
the relative value of the euro and the dollar.
Yes.
And it's gone up and down quite a bit, but it's been relatively stable at about 92 cents to a euro. When we first came here, I believe it was as high as 96 or 7. When we were here in springtime, I think it was even at $1 or a little bit more, but it's now been at 92, between 91 and 93 for the better part of the whole time we've been here. So that's where it's at. Obviously, we'd like to see the dollar be stronger, but it is what it is. So.
And something that you may want to consider for yourself relative to your own decision as to whether you'd like to do this as well. All right. So I need to just do a quick update on my hair color for those who are interested.
Okay.
People might be interested in knowing. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready? Here we go. There it is. I still have the zigzag going on, and it's growing in a little bit. It's a little like a little dark and white. I've not ever gotten to this point officially. I think I'm at close to 8 weeks right now. It's been a while because I did it right soon after we arrived in Versailles,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Like the second week we were here.
Right.
So it has to be at least 6 weeks. This is a long time for me.
And how long has it been since you said you're going to let it grow out? 1 week?
It's been 1 week.
Okay. So don't forget the over-under is a month. And take the under. No. She's going to cave.
I will not. Absolutely will not be caving. So thank you everyone for your support. All of the people who have been expressing support and encouragement.
And as most of you said,
my grow out.
As many of you said, I shouldn't say most, many of you said she's beautiful either way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's time now to move on to the difference between citizenship, residency, and long-term residency versus temporary residency.
Okay, so KJ's created a PDF that explains all of this. It's going to be attached to our blog, and it comes from Expatica, so we think it's very valuable and real. So why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, and I've taken the highlights, so to speak, and put it into a PDF that you can download and you might find valuable. So there are some similarities between residency and citizenship. Both require you to have lived in France for 3 to 5 years. So we're talking here about permanent residency versus temporary residency. So both of them, you need to live in France for 3 to 5 years, and you need to have integrated into French society. For example, you need sufficient knowledge of the French language. It states here at least what's referred to as A2 level or above. So that was interesting. I didn't know that. So if you are interested in becoming a French citizen or obtaining a permanent resident card, then you will need to achieve those things. Something to think about.
That seems fair.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And there are 3 different types of permanent resident cards. So there's a 10-year resident card for foreigners, and it's valid for 10 years, and it allows both EU and non-EU citizens to stay in France. There's also the long-term EU resident card, which is for non-EU nationals who can apply for long-term EU resident card, and it allows them to live in France for 10 years and visit most other EU countries without a visa. So that's one of the things about a permanent resident card, is that you don't need a visa to travel to other countries. Then there's the permanent resident card, which is both EU and non-EU nationals can get unconditional and permanent residence in France unless, and this is in bold, unless your behavior poses a threat to public order and security. So you can only get this card after you've already had a 10-year resident card or long-term EU card. So this is like you build your way up to this permanent resident card after 10 years. Okay, so that's permanent. And so it also says it's valid for 10 years, and it can be renewed indefinitely. And that means you can remain in France as long as you renew your card. So it's sort of like, aren't the US passports good for 10 years? And then you have to renew?
Yes, I believe
something
so.
like that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the temporary resident cards, which should not be confused with permanent resident cards, which I had no idea that there were even different types of cards. So the temporary resident cards are 3 as well: long stay visa with a residence permit, which is referred to as the VLS-TS, which is what we have. This allows you to stay in France for 1 year, and you can typically exchange it for a longer permit after it expires. And then there's the temporary resident card, which is valid for up to 5 years and can be renewed 3 times. And then there's the multi-year resident card. And this resident card is usually valid for 4 years and comes with visas such as the family visa. I think typically if you are seeking a retirement visa, you'll start with the long stay visa with a residence permit, which required us to then register our visas as soon as we got here. You have 3 months to do that. And if you don't do that, then you risk not having your visa renewed when it comes time for renewal. And then this talks about, I think there was a question about, can I retire in France? If anyone can retire in France. This is a question that's on Expatica. You know, who can retire in France? Citizens of the European Union, European Economic Area, or Switzerland will not need a visa. Non-EU citizens, that's us, must apply for a French visa before entering the country. The French government's visa web portal allows you to quickly check whether you need a visa to enter France. Okay, this is just repeating what I just told you, which is when you move to France from outside the EU or the EEA or the Schengen area, if I'm saying that correctly, you'll need to apply for the long stay visa and apply for a residency permit within 2 to 3 months of your arrival. This will allow you to live in the country for up to a year, and retirees may opt to apply for a visitor visa. And to get a visitor visa, you'll need to prove you have sufficient income to support yourself in France, be it through pension income, savings, investments. It doesn't need to be like they don't want you working in France. That's a whole nother visa. Like if you plan on coming to France and obtaining a job in France and being paid, then you will need a working visa, a different visa. And then there's also different stipulations if you have relatives who are from France, which can make it easier for you to come and live in France, obviously. Okay, here it tells you about how much you need to be making. So the France Visa Service requires evidence that you have income or funds of at least equivalent to the French minimum wage, which in 2022 was 19,237 euro before deductions or tax and social contributions. After the deductions, that works out to a monthly net income of 1,266 euros or about 15,200 euros a year. And you can replace your VTLS visa with a visitor's residency permit after a year. After 5 years, you can apply for permanent residency.
So that's a lot to digest. So that's why we're putting this PDF on our blog, our website, and please download it. And all the information came from Expatica, right?
Yes, so if you just go to expatica.com and click France, because Expatica is great for multiple countries.
So can we go back to part of that question was banking also that we didn't really hit, but we talked about it earlier in the video, but I want to make sure we hit on it again. This does not, us living in France hasn't changed our American banking system at all. I still have banking in our normal banks. In fact, we have, I think, 3 different banks that we have accounts in the United States. We have retirement also, which is separate. Those are not hard to access from here. Even somebody sent us a check, I forgot why, even...
the what do you call it? The rent,
Oh, that's right. We got our rent deposit back from our apartment. They sent us a check. We can deposit it here. You can direct deposit by taking a picture of the check front and back. And most major banks, if not all now in the United States, you can deposit electronically. It's a piece of cake. It's not, it's not hard to do at all.
Well, I think that the requirement, though, is that you'll need to have an address in the U.S. that you're using for your bank account and for your business. I mean, I have a business in the U.S., so we have an address for that.
And that's not hard to do either.
Yeah.
So You just have to think the things through, and you know the answers are there.
That's it. Anything else? Any updates we want to provide in terms of our experience here in Versailles and the fact that we are moving? Yay!
Next Monday.
We're moving next Monday to
So
Nice.
my experience in Versailles has been overwhelmingly positive, although I have to say comparing anything to Paris is unfair because
Yeah.
Paris is just
So beautiful.
in another realm. So I think that when we came here, we were so enamored with Paris that was a little bit of, you know, it was a little bit hard for us. But now we've become part of the community, just like if you moved anywhere, you become part of the community. And Pierce loves it here. Pierce says, I could live here easily.
Yeah.
You know, I could live here too, but we want to explore everything. So that's what we're doing, and we're on to Nice on Monday.
Well, and as much as we want to explore everything, the struggle for me is the impermanence and wanting to be somewhere for a significant length of time. I do want to make a choice after Saint-Tropez. So we're going to Nice for a month, then we're going to Saint-Tropez for a month, and then I think I am going to be at my limit when it comes to like, okay, let's find a place where we stay for like 3 months. Where that will be, like, will that be Paris? Like, where do you think that should be?
Well, let's remember that when we made this plan to begin with, we said we were going to go to 4 places. And that will have fulfilled going to 4 places.
Right.
So we should be ready to make a decision.
I think we'll be ready to make
Sure.
a decision. At least a decision in terms of at least, you know, 3 to 6 months so we can start putting down roots. Because like you said, you start to get to know people, you start to, like we know the guy at the little grocery store that we go to,
Sure.
and I look forward to sometimes just seeing his smiling face, and you know, certain other people, these places that we go frequently every few days or so.
coffee shop.
The coffee shop, the Stray Bean, Tony's there all the time. And so you start to build relationships with these people, and then it's like you're gone. And that is, I don't know.
But the truth of the matter is that with these relationships, if they are real, then just like with people back in the United
Yeah.
States, you can still be in contact. And we're going to, if we end up in Paris, we'll be, you know, a half an hour away. So,
And I do have to say that every single time we go into Paris, there's something, I think, to the fact that every time we go into Paris, and I especially felt it yesterday when we met actually one of our viewers yesterday at a coffee shop, and that was really, really nice, really great experience. And there's this part of me that feels like I'm home when
me too.
we're in Paris.
Me
I just
too.
feel like we're home. And
Whenever we come out of the subway at Saint Michel, I feel like I'm home. And by the way, we should, before we get letters and whatnot, we met him at a cafe, not at a coffee shop.
did I say coffee shop?
Yeah,
And a very traditional.
very traditional,
Paris
where all the
cafe.
actors and things
Yeah.
like that hang out. But here, the place that we go to is an actual coffee shop by design, different than a cafe.
Right.
And so, yes, we love Paris.
Yeah. So I think we'll end on that note, how
Okay.
much we love Paris. All right, that's it for today's video, for our Q&A session today that we actually do every single week. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks. And don't forget to download the PDF that KJ created from Expatica. And also don't forget to send us all your questions. We'll do the best we can to answer them. And if we can't answer them, we'll tell you we don't really know the answer, and we'll try to do some research if we can to direct you in the right place.
All right, we'll see you again in the next video.
And don't forget, if you like this video, hit the like button and also subscribe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.